Hi everyone, this is the second video for sections 4.2 and 4.3. So at this point we're transitioning to talk about the material from 4.3, which is on order of operations. So the first thing to note is make sure you know the difference between expression and equation, because right here in this example it tells us to evaluate this expression. So the reason that this is an expression and not an equation is because of the root word of equation being equal. So expressions don't have an equal sign, whereas equations have an equal sign. So if we said that this equation or this expression was equal to some x, then that's an equation. So you can think about this as, right in chapter 1, we talked about what is a statement. So an equation is more like a statement, right? It's a sentence, a full sentence where you have a verb, right? This thing is equal to, and that can be true or false. Right, so this is really similar to the difference between a statement and not a statement, is that there's nothing to check with an expression to see that it's true or not. It's just what it is. Okay, so we want to evaluate this expression. So we're going to do this kind of naively. So we're going to say, okay, what if I do this and I don't know the order of operations? So what would I do? So there are multiple ways that we can do this. So let's say that we do all of the multiplication in the problem first. So if we do all the multiplication in the problem first, then we would, so we have 5 times 6 divided by 3 times 2. So if we do all the multiplication first, then this is 30 divided by 6, and this is 5. Okay, so that's one way to do this. But another way to do this is to do division first. So 5 times 6 divided by 3 times 2. So if we do division first, we do the 6 divided by 3 first. So this is 5 times 2 times 2, which is 10 times 2, which is 20. So if we do division first, this is the answer that we get. So what if we do this working left to right? So 5 times 6 divided by 3 times 2. So if we do this left to right, first we do 5 times 6, which is 30. And then we do this division next, so that's 10. And we do 10 times 2, which is 20. Okay. So let me center this. So we can also do this left to right. And lastly, we can do this right to left. Lastly, we can do this right to left, where this one is kind of the least intuitive way to do it because we live in a left to right society, right? Where we read left to right, but other cultures read right to left. So this would be a really natural way to try and do things for them. So if we do right to left, then we do this 3 times 2 first. So that's 3 times 2 is 6. Then we do this division. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. This is 5 times 1, and then that's 11. Okay, so you can see that we get different answers depending on how we do this. And so you can see that these all seem like they would be pretty valid orders, right? Especially because I know that you should all be familiar with PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And typically we think about that like so. So the first thing we do is the parentheses, and then the exponents, and then the multiplying and dividing, and then the adding and subtraction. So we're going to take a slight diversion, talk about this, and then I'll go back up. Okay, so the first thing we do is the parentheses, and so we perform the operations in grouping symbols. So we're going to expand on this, right? It's not just parentheses. These aren't the only grouping symbols that we see. So we see a lot more than this. So we see parentheses, we see brackets. So a lot of times people use brackets. People use brackets if we if we're supposed to have parentheses around parentheses. Oftentimes people will use brackets just to distinguish them. We have absolute value, we have these curly brackets, and then this is actually a fraction sign. So for example, if we had some expression on the top of the fraction and some expression on the bottom of the fraction, this is saying that you do everything on the top first and do everything on the bottom first, and then you divide last. So that's what that grouping symbol means of this fraction. Okay, so those are the grouping symbols, and then, yeah, right, if they're nested, work from the inside out. So everything is going to go inside out and left to right are the most important things to take away. I'm gonna underline them in a different color. Okay, so next we do exponents. So again, evaluate exponents next. We talked about the exponent rules in last video, so that should be all good. And then we multiply and divide in order from left to right, and add and subtract in order from left to right. So you can see how we got different answers depending on how we did things up here. And so we have this order of operations really to just have standardization in math. Once you get to the math that professors do, you collaborate a lot with different people in different countries. And so we want to make sure that people who are doing math over there in Europe are doing the same math that we're doing here in America, right? We all have this standard order of operations that's the same no matter where you are. And it is this one. This left to right is the correct one. So although the division first also gave us the same answer, this is just a coincidence. So this is the right way to do it, meaning that if on any of your homeworks or exams, when you're showing your work, if you show this work, this is incorrect. Although you get the correct answer, it's not the correct process. And what's the point of learning if not to understand the process? Right, if you don't understand the process, you haven't truly learned the material. And so we're not going to deal with that, right? I'm not going to accept this as a correct answer, and I would not recommend that you do either. I don't think that's pedagogically sound. So this is the correct way to do this process. One thing to note is that this is going from left to right. Some of you may have seen whenever you learn PEMDAS that people told you, so we'll write it out. So you may have seen when you learn PEMDAS to do it actually in this order. So we do all of the parentheses first, all of the exponents first, all of the multiplication first. That's not correct. You don't do all of the multiplication before all of the division, right? Because if we did all of the multiplication before all of the division, we would have gotten this answer 5 here, which is incorrect. So again, this is incorrect. Yeah, because even if we multiply first, by coincidence, we get, or if we multiply first, we don't get the same thing. So this is really important that multiplying and division happen in the same step, and it's according left to right. Okay, so we're going to do the same example again, where we evaluate this expression using the correct order of operations. So 5 times 6 divided by 3 times 2 is 30 divided by 3 times 2 is 10 times 2, which is 20. Okay, you can put an equal sign on each step like I did, but if you don't, it's pretty clear what you mean here. You can have this, but you don't have to. One thing I want to note about how you write these things down is don't do this. So this is an example of something that is, again, incorrect. So if you do 5 times 6 equals 30, and then you want to just go ahead and write this divided by 3, that is incorrect. The reason being that, yeah, I get what you're saying. You wanted to do 5 times 6 first and then divide by 3, but these are not equal, right? We know what equal means. We've talked about it before. And so these two expressions are not equal. 5 times 6 is not equal to 30 times 3. So if you want to do something like this, you should write it in a different line. So 5 times 6 equals 30. 30 divided by 3 equals 10, and then continue rather than in one line straight across, because this does not respect the properties of equality that we've talked about before. Okay, one last thing to note, right? This correct order of operations isn't natural in a way. It wasn't one that stood out to everybody, right? Just like I said, this left to right is really a kind of cultural thing, right? There are other cultures that read right to left, and so it would potentially make a lot more sense in those cultures to do these operations right to left. But this is, just the order that we have all agreed on and that everybody uses. So yeah, there's no one way that one of these should have been picked, but this is just the one that has been picked, and that's the way that we operate today. Okay, that's all for this video.